I'm sorry. Yesterday, I zoned out. I was so tired, and so I've got some things. I've got some videos that I should have put up yesterday, and I haven't, and I will do today. And the problem is, if I was tired, just think what the country is. Really tired, really exhausted. Why? Because the leadership is absent. And if you look at Badenoch and the Conservative leadership, you get a pretty clear sign of the trajectory, of the state, of the direction of our country at the moment. And it looks back to Brexit for a solution. Brexit was not a solution. Brexit was an absence. And once Brexit was done, there was nothing to fill its place. It was a void. And Badenoch is probably the best example of a void, of an absence that we have today. Badenoch, loud on what to tear down, silent on what to build. Badenoch is Miss Negative. She's chosen the politics of subtraction. Scrap this treaty, rip up that statute, harden that slogan. What does she actually want to do for Britain beyond denunciation? From the ECHR to climate law, from radio sound bites to culture war riffs, her programme is a void padded with adjectives. She is auditioning as a wrecking ball and calling it leadership. And as I say, we've seen all this before in Brexit. Lord Frost didn't know what to do. Boris Johnson didn't know what to do once the wall was down. Last year, Badenoch conceded that quitting the European Convention on Human Rights was not a silver bullet on immigration. Today, she declares departure is necessary to protect our borders, our veterans, our citizens, brandishing Lord Wolfson's near 200-page review as proof. The timing, on the eve of the Manchester Conference and under pressure from Reform UK, is a tell. A policy she argued against becomes a flagship because Nigel Farage growls and her backbenchers twitch and she's got nothing else to offer, except a void. Wilson stress tests 5 Tory priorities: deporting foreign criminals and irregular arrivals, shielding veterans from legal action, prioritising British citizens for services, ensuring sentences track Parliament's intent, and preventing courts using climate law to block planning. She says the ECHR creates significant constraints across all 5. Yet even he cautions that withdrawal is not a cure-all. Legal scholars warn of real-world consequences: isolation alongside Russia and Belarus, strain on the UK-EU trade deal, serious questions about the Belfast Good Friday framework. The Northern Ireland Affairs Committee has already flagged likely breach, and Badenoch's camp simply waves this away and claims otherwise. Politically, it is worse. Senior Conservatives long treated exit as a red line. Damon Green said so when he chaired One Nation. Sir Robert Buckland called leaving an act of folly and argued to reform from within. Both lost their seats, but the substance didn't evaporate with their majorities. Meanwhile, a Reform UK spokesman mocks the conversion: 14 years to do nothing in government, 14 years in opposition, 14 months in opposition to decide a posture. If this is a masterclass in seriousness, the class is empty, but we know that. Badenoch is a void. What is the constructive argument? Which domestic charter? Which independent redress? Which allied assurances? Silence. Restore sovereignty is not an operating manual. It is a sticker on a broken machine, and we heard it before. We heard it with Brexit. Restore sovereignty. Brexit will restore sovereignty. Brexit was a void. Badenoch is a void. Badenoch now pledges to repeal the Climate Change Act and calls net zero a slogan. She insists current laws can't work, won't work, and are expensive, while promising cheap energy and more North Sea drilling. That is not a transition plan, it's an alibi. Look at the reaction from her own side. Theresa May calls repeal a catastrophic mistake that detonates 17 years of cross-party continuity and investment certainty. Alok Sharma warns it squanders tens of billions in private capital and jobs that follow. Lord Debon says it reverses what Conservatives stand for. The CBI calls it a backward step for growth and energy security. Even inside the party, members are split. A majority of Conservative members say they support the 2050 target, while almost 7 in 10 of the public do. Badenoch is choosing a minority taste for theatrical rollback over the country's majority preference for steady, bankable progress. She is choosing avoid because avoid is what she is. Avoid this, avoid that. 14 months of avoiding any decisions. And now what she presents is avoid. Because that's all she can do. That's all she is. Avoidance. Where's the positive blueprint? What she actually got to do, what she's actually got to show for those 14 months. Which market instruments, which grid upgrades, which industrial strategy to crowd in clean investment at scale. We get a tautology. Growth first, net zero later. Later means never, and investors can read a shuttered window sign. Her round of BBC local interviews distilled the problem. BBC local interviews, why? Because nobody really wants to talk to her at the national level, because there is nothing to talk to. She is a void. We need to deport all foreign criminals, she says. How? At scale. And with what agreements? Under which legal framework once you exit the ECHR? No operational map, just a void. Even tougher policies than Labour or reform on immigration? What are they? Beyond denying that the small boat problem has existed for 14 years when it plainly has. Scrap landmark climate law, call net zero a slogan, drill more gas, and still promise a cleaner environment? Arithmetic is not supplied. Rule out the military and the Channel, sensibly, but offer no civil maritime capacity uplift to replace the fantasy. On the Hillsborough law, admit that she's not read it in full, then hint at strengthening it. That is posture, not policy, but it's nice to know that she admits she hasn't bothered doing the work. On schools, denounce children at protests rather than engage with the funding and hunger arguments on free school meals. On housing, gesture at migration numbers to explain shortages while ducking the missing piece. Large-scale supply, planning reform, capital. Asked to explain why taxes, spending and debt ballooned under her party, she devoted to the pandemic and Labour 15 years ago. The ledger is theirs, the reckoning is absent. It's true. It's quite true. The rot started under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. The rot in terms of immigration, in terms of economics, started then. But the Conservatives didn't fix it, and Labour isn't fixing it now. And what is Kemi Badenoch offering but avoidance? Her remarks after the vile attack on the Manchester synagogue combined rightful outrage with another convenient wedge, claiming quite a lot of pro-Palestine protests are cover for anti-Semitism. That is an accusation that demands precision, not insinuation. The Jewish community deserves scrutiny, not instrumentalization. The country deserves leaders who can separate policing criminality from towering lawful assembly. Once more, the negative is dialed up because the positive requires facts, care and restraint. Labour's line is blunt. She has adopted a policy she opposed because she's too weak to stand up for her own party in the face of reform. Her retort is that only the Conservatives have done the legal homework to leave the ECHR properly. Yet homework that ends in burning the textbook is not scholarship. It's a stunt. If your unique selling point to bravery is to cut, if your unique selling point is arson, what exactly do you build once the cutting, once the burning stops? Even party members are unconvinced on her climate U-turn. Grandees rebel. Business looks elsewhere. And the rejoinder is to promise that at conference she will unveil tougher stances and tell us who she is. She will show herself. Well, we don't want Lady Godiva. We want some substance. We already know who she is. A leader who fills airtime with teardowns and leaves the hard graft of construction blank. Taking stuff away doesn't give you something new. Stripping away doesn't provide substance. Leadership is addition. Its institutions you can defend, its laws you can improve, its allies you can persuade, its markets you can mobilize, and public goods you can deliver. Badenoch offers us none of that. Exit the ECHR with no credible successor framework, repeal the Climate Change Act with no bankable industry plan, tough talk on immigration with no workable removals pipeline, and no serious housing supply agenda. Sound and fury on schools and protests with little policy content beneath it. Miss Negative can win a headline. She cannot win the future. Britain needs builders. Britain needs the best. Britain does not need Badenoch.